And guys, I'm so pumped for this one because we're going to be talking about something that I think is really important, and that's how to improve both your English listening and speaking skills at the same time
Yes,
from one single source.
absolutely.
It's incredible. I was looking at this source material,
Right.
and I was just blown away by how much practical advice there
Yes.
was in there.
Yeah.
And so I immediately thought, we have to share this with everybody because there's so much good stuff here.
There is.
And I
Yeah.
think everyone listening can really benefit from it. So
I think so too.
our goal today is to take all this information,
Yeah.
all this really awesome information, and distill it down into actionable advice that you can use starting today.
Love it. Yeah, it's not just about theory,
Right.
right? It's about giving people the tools they can actually use to see real improvement in their English skills.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited to dive into this with you.
Me too.
Yeah.
So let's start with this idea of active listening. The source talks a lot about this. It makes sense, right? Like listening is obviously super important.
It's the foundation.
Right. If you can't understand what people are saying,
Exactly.
then you
Right.
can't really respond, right?
Right.
But what I really liked about the source's approach to active listening is that they go beyond just like
Uh-huh.
pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about things like tone and rhythm and intonation
Right. Right.
and how all of those things can really affect the meaning of what's being said.
Absolutely. So much of communication is nonverbal, isn't it? Like you can say the same sentence
Right.
in 10 different ways and it can have 10 different meanings.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that's often overlooked,
I agree.
especially by English learners.
Right,
Because,
yeah.
we're so focused on like
Yeah.
understanding the vocabulary,
Grammar. Yeah.
the grammar, yeah,
The structure.
and making sure we're saying things correctly that we sometimes forget about, like the
Yeah.
nuances.
The music of the language.
Yes, exactly. The music.
Exactly. And think about it. Sarcasm, for example.
Ooh, yeah.
If someone says, oh, that's just great, but their voice drops on great,
Right?
you know they're not actually happy about it.
Totally.
Right. That tone completely changes the meaning.
It's like a secret code.
It is. It's like a secret code that native speakers understand instinctively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why active listening is so important.
Exactly.
Because you have to be paying attention not just to the words, but to the way they're being said.
Yes, to all the subtle cues.
Yes. All the cues. Okay, so moving on, the source also talks about
Okay.
a really interesting technique for improving listening comprehension.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to admit, when I first read this, I was like,
Really?
I don't know about this.
What was it?
But the more I thought about it, the more it kind of made sense.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So they suggest using transcripts alongside audio.
Oh, interesting.
So like if you're listening to a podcast or
Yeah.
an audiobook or watching a TV show,
Yeah.
they recommend having the transcript open at the same time.
I see. So you're both hearing and seeing the language.
Exactly. And at first I thought, well, isn't that kind of cheating? Like,
Yeah, I can see how you'd think that.
shouldn't you be able to understand it just by listening?
Right, right.
But then I realized that
Mm-hmm.
it's not about making it easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's about making it more effective.
Right. It's about creating those connections
Yes.
between the spoken word and the written word.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think for a lot of English learners,
Yeah.
that connection isn't always there.
It's a missing link for many.
Right. And so
Mm.
by using transcripts, you're essentially bridging that gap.
You're giving your brain two ways to process the information.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
hearing the pronunciation, you're seeing the spelling.
You're seeing the grammar in action.
Yes. And you're also seeing like
Yeah,
how the language is structured.
exactly. And, one thing I've noticed is that when you're listening to something, especially if it's fast-paced,
Right.
you might miss certain words or phrases.
Yeah, definitely.
But when you have the transcript, you can go back, you
Mhm.
can pause, you can rewind, you can really take your time to make sure you're understanding everything.
Totally. And I think that's especially helpful for things like
Mm-hmm.
idioms and slang.
Oh, absolutely. Those can be really tricky to catch just by listening.
Right. Because they often don't
Yeah.
make literal sense.
Right. They have their own special meaning.
Exactly. But if you
Yes.
see them written down,
Uh-huh.
it's like, oh, okay, I get it now.
It clicks. And, another benefit of transcripts is that they can help you expand your vocabulary
Oh, for sure.
because you're seeing all these new words in context.
Right.
And you can easily look them up if you don't know what they mean.
Totally. It's like having a dictionary right there with you.
Exactly. So it's a really powerful tool for language learning.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I've been experimenting with this myself.
Oh, really?
And I've actually been really surprised by how much it's helped me.
How so?
Well, I've noticed that I'm understanding more.
That's great.
Like I'm able to follow conversations better,
Yeah.
and I'm also picking up on more of the
The
nuances.
subtleties. Yeah.
Yeah, the subtleties of the language.
That's wonderful. It's amazing how such a simple technique can make such a big difference.
I know. It's kind of like a secret weapon.
It is. And, it doesn't have to be every single podcast or audiobook or TV show.
Right.
You can just use it selectively.
Yeah, like if
Yeah.
there's something that you're really interested in.
Exactly. Or if you're finding something particularly challenging to understand,
Right.
then pull up a transcript.
Yes,
It
exactly.
can really make a world of difference.
Okay, so
Yeah.
moving on to another really interesting point that the source makes.
Okay.
And this one is all about accents.
Oh, accents. One of
Yeah.
my favorite topics.
I know, it's so fascinating.
It is. It's amazing how many different ways there are to speak English.
I know, and it can be super overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. Especially for learners who are used to hearing just one or two accents.
Right, like if you've mostly been exposed to American English,
Yeah.
and then suddenly you're watching a British TV show,
It can feel like a whole new language.
it's like, what are they saying?
Exactly. And that's why the source emphasizes the importance of exposure
Yes,
to different accents.
to as many different accents as possible.
Absolutely. The more you listen to different accents, the better your ear becomes at recognizing those subtle variations.
It's like expanding your ear's vocabulary.
Exactly. You're training your ear to be more flexible.
To be more adaptable.
And that's so important in today's world where
Yeah.
we're constantly interacting with people from different cultures
Right, and different backgrounds.
in different parts of the world.
Yeah, you never know who you're going to be talking to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So having that ear for accents can really help you.
For sure. It can make you a more effective communicator.
It can make you a more confident communicator.
It can make you a more empathetic communicator.
Yes. All of those things.
Okay, so we've talked about listening,
Right.
and now let's shift gears and talk about
Okay.
actually speaking English.
The other side of the coin.
Yes. And I love
Yeah.
the source's advice on this because
Yeah.
it's so practical and so doable.
Okay. Tell me more.
So one of the things they suggest
Mm-hmm.
is talking to yourself.
Talking to yourself. Now that's
I
interesting.
don't know. It sounds kind of crazy, right?
It does, a little bit.
But they swear by it.
And why is that?
Well, they say that it's a really good way
Hmm.
to just get comfortable with speaking.
Okay.
Like even if you don't have anyone to talk to,
Yeah.
you can just talk to yourself
Right.
about anything.
About anything that comes to mind.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
what you're doing that day,
Mm-hmm.
what you're planning to do,
Yeah.
what you're thinking about.
What you ate for breakfast.
Exactly. It doesn't matter.
Right.
The point is just to get your mouth moving.
To get those words flowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to get your brain thinking in English.
Exactly. Because, when you're thinking in English,
Yeah.
you're not translating in your head.
Right.
You're thinking directly in the language.
Which is what you want.
It is. It's that shift from translation to thinking.
Yes. And I think that talking to yourself can really help with that.
It can. It's like a mental workout for your English.
Yes, exactly.
It's like going to the gym for your brain.
Okay, so another technique
Mm-hmm.
that the source talks about
Okay.
is shadowing.
Shadowing. What's that?
So basically, it's mimicking native speakers
Oh, interesting.
in real time.
In real time. So like while they're talking.
Yeah, exactly. So you're listening to someone speak,
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to repeat what they're saying
Okay.
at the same time.
So you're like their shadow.
Yes, that's why it's called shadowing.
I get it.
And it sounds kind of weird,
That
right?
does sound a little strange.
But it's actually super effective.
Really? Why is that?
Well, it forces you to pay attention to every single sound,
Okay.
every intonation, every pause.
It's like you're dissecting their speech.
Yes,
Mm.
exactly. And by doing that,
Yeah.
you're training your mouth
Uh-huh.
and your brain to produce those sounds correctly.
I see. So it's like a pronunciation workout
Yes. It's like you're building muscle memory.
for your mouth.
Exactly.
That's fascinating. And how do you actually do it? Like, do you just pick any audio and start shadowing?
Well, the source recommends starting with something that's not too fast
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
and something that you're somewhat familiar with.
Right. So you're not completely lost.
Exactly. So maybe like a podcast or a TV show that you've already watched a few times.
Got it.
And then
Yeah.
they suggest breaking it down into small chunks.
Oh, okay.
So like a sentence or two at a time.
Right.
And just really focusing on mimicking the speaker's pronunciation as closely as possible.
Okay. So it's all about precision
Yes, exactly.
and repetition.
And repetition. And I have to say, this technique is not easy.
I can imagine.
It's challenging.
It sounds like it takes a lot of focus.
It does. But it's so worth it.
Because
Because you can see real improvement.
in your pronunciation.
Yes. And also in your fluency.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, because you're training your brain to process the language faster.
I see.
So you're able to speak more smoothly and naturally.
It's like you're removing those mental roadblocks.
Yes, exactly.
It's fantastic.
And the source actually gives a really cool tip
What's that?
for making shadowing even more effective.
Okay, I'm all ears.
They suggest recording yourself
Recording yourself.
while you're shadowing.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and then listening back to it.
So you can hear how you sound.
Exactly. And compare it to the original speaker.
To identify any areas where you need to improve.
Exactly. So it's like getting instant feedback.
Wow, that's a really powerful technique.
I know. I've been trying it myself.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like you can really hear the difference.
In your pronunciation.
Yes. And it's so motivating because you can actually track your progress.
That's fantastic.
Okay, so we've covered active listening.
Mm-hmm.
We've covered using transcripts.
Right.
We've covered talking to yourself.
Yes.
And we've covered shadowing.
Right.
And now for our final tip from the source.
Okay, I'm excited.
And this one is all about
Mm-hmm.
finding a language exchange partner.
Ah, yes. The power of real-world practice.
Exactly. Because all of these techniques that we've talked about,
Yeah.
they're all great,
They are.
but they're not going to be as effective
Mm-hmm.
if you're not actually using English in real-life situations.
Absolutely. You need to put what you're learning into practice.
Right. You need to interact with other people.
You need to have conversations
You need to make mistakes.
and learn from those mistakes.
Exactly. And that's where a language exchange partner comes in.
They're like your partner in crime
Yes.
on your language learning journey.
Exactly. And, it doesn't have to be someone who's a native speaker.
No, not at all. It can be anyone who's also learning English.
Right. And you can help each other.
You can support each other.
You can motivate each other.
You can practice together,
And you can also learn about each other's cultures.
which is a bonus.
It is. It's like a win-win situation.
It is.
And the source emphasizes the importance
Yeah.
of actually using the new vocabulary
Yes.
that you're learning.
Don't let those words just sit there in your notebook.
Right. Like, don't be afraid to use them in conversations,
Exactly. Push yourself to use those new words.
even if you're not sure if you're using them correctly.
It's okay to make mistakes.
That's how you learn.
Absolutely. And I remember the first time I used the word ubiquitous in a casual conversation. I was so
Oh.
proud of myself.
Good for you.
It felt like a small victory.
I love those little wins.
They keep you going, don't they?
They do. They make all the hard work worth it.
Absolutely.
So, to sum up,
Yeah,
we've learned so much today
we have.
from this one amazing source.
It's been a treasure trove of information.
It really has. And I think the big takeaway for me is that improving your English listening and speaking skills
Yeah.
doesn't have to be complicated.
That doesn't have to be overwhelming.
It can be fun,
It can be.
and it can be something that you do
Yeah.
a little bit each day.
A little bit goes a long way.
Exactly. And before we go,
Yeah.
I just want to leave everyone with one final thought,
Okay.
and that is to remember that
Yeah.
learning a language
Mm-hmm.
is a journey.
It is.
It's not a destination.
It's not about perfection.
It's about progress.
It's about growth.
It's about enjoying the process.
Yes. Find joy in the journey.
And celebrate those little wins.
Absolutely. And, finding a language partner to share the journey with can make it even more rewarding.
It can. It's like having a cheerleader.
It is. Someone to celebrate those wins with and encourage you when you're feeling discouraged.
Exactly.
Happy learning, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.